Today, we are going to discuss how to make your mind your best friend, how to create a healthy relationship with the mind. The relationship that you have with your mind will determine the relationship that you have with your children, with your spouse, in your career, in your money, and essentially in every single area of your life. You know that saying, teach people how to treat you? It's a great saying. It's a great theory. It teaches boundaries. It teaches people what they can say and not say around you. What's appropriate, what's your standards. Great. Teach people how to treat you all day. I am all about it. But at the end of the day, you can't control what your mama says to you. You can't control everything that happens in your life. That person that cuts you off on the highway, the person that calls you a derogatory name, your boss that belittles you, your wife or husband that says these awful things to you. You can't always control everything around you. You really can't control anything around you. Just hope that people respect those boundaries. But because you cannot control those people, at least be able to handle how they impact your well-being. So instead of focusing on trying to teach people how to treat you and trying to control people, it should be about, you should focus more on teaching your mind how to treat you. Because again, that relationship with your mind, how you train your mind to respond to those difficult moments, that is the quality of life that you're going to have. So let's take how the relationship with your mind can impact your business. I'm a product of an entrepreneur. My father's an entrepreneur. My husband's an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. One thing that I know 100% about business is that there are going to be more things that don't go the way that you want than do. So success in business has nothing to do with how many degrees you have, how much money you have, who you know, how smart you are, and everything to do with your ability to pivot, your ability to adapt, and your ability to persevere when those moments happen that you don't want, that you don't like, and that you don't expect. It is not the number of falls, but it's how resilient you are. And that starts and ends with the mind. So let's take some examples for that. Let's say that you had a whole bunch of deals lined up that you're so excited for your business and none of the deals go through. That's what happened. You can think to yourself, oh, I'm a failure. I'm never going to make it. This is just my life. I'm never going to make the money. I'm never going to have the success. I'm a failure. Now, what's interesting is that the thoughts that you have will connect with those emotions. There's actual science behind this. The technology of science is so magnificent now. But they say when you think a certain thing, your body actually releases those chemicals that align with that belief. So if you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. Or you can have a thought that's similar to what my father says when he's giving his speeches about business. When something happens, like a deal not going through, he says, oh, that was an unexpected outcome. Well, what lesson can I learn from this? Now, what type of emotions are going to fall with that type of thought? They're not going to be the same as I'm a failure, I'm never going to make it. They're going to be the emotions of motivation, wanting to keep going. Okay. Now, let's say you have some investors that are really interested, and this is something that can completely transform your business. And the investors say no. What's that first thought that pops in? Rejection. What's the emotion that follows rejection? The feelings of, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I'm just never going to do this. Or you could have the thought, what do I need to change to get to yes? Which is going to motivate you to keep going? Rejection? Or what do I need to do next to get to yes? You have a choice. Now, I understand Our brains have been wired, have been programmed to think a certain way. So yes, automatically you may think I'm being rejected again. I am a failure. That is okay. You can't control what those automatic thoughts are. However, it is so important to be mindful of your thoughts, to be aware of those thoughts, because when that thought arises, that is the time to check it and create a new thought. You may not be able to change your emotion right away, but we all know that if that rejection thought comes up, oh, there it is. Pinpoint it and say to yourself, oh, no, we're not going to let you have control. What can I do to get to yes? This was an unexpected outcome. Did I like it? No. Did I want it? No. But what lesson did I learn from it? Do you see how those two examples were things that happened outside of you? And yes, they weren't necessarily something that you expected. They were not something that you wanted to happen. However, whether you would stop and just be a victim and stay in that space, or you keep moving forward, that will determine whether you're going to have a successful business or not. The same theory also works with your romantic partners. What are the chances that your husband or your wife is always going to say everything you want them to say? They're always going to do everything you want them to do. 0. And if you've been married for, a couple years, you learn that pretty soon that your spouses are human and they're going to do stuff that you look at them like, who did I marry? But when you have an awareness of your thoughts, when you have an intent of what you want your marriage to be, and when you handle those emotions up here, you can approach your spouse, you can approach your partner and communicate in a more effective manner. Now, this is not about becoming a doormat to your spouse where they can just say and do and, be however you want to be. And then you're just this jolly, loving person at all times. But this is about having self-awareness. This is about your partnership and what it is you want for the outcome of this conversation, of this conflict, not getting lost in your thoughts and emotions. I'm going to give you an example of my husband and I. When we first started dating, I think we had moved in together. And so you really learn a lot more about your partner when you move in, because it's not just this, oh, let's go out to dinner, let's go to a movie, let's go to the park. You've seen them all in the high times. Everybody can be fun and games all then. But when you live together, you're seeing all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the fun, the not so fun, how they handle certain things, leaving trash on the ground or whatever it is, whatever things that, we all have our little things. And I had noticed that he would talk to me like an employee. Now, mind you, my husband goes out on tour. He's, the boss of his company. He's the CEO of the company. And sometimes he's responsible for 60 people at a time. So he is, the boss. But I noticed, he would come home and he would talk to me the same way. And it would make me feel some kind of way. It made me feel less than. It made me feel like I wasn't his equal. And what I know now is what I wish I knew then is that nobody can make me feel any kind of way. All of those thoughts, all of those emotions come from somewhere inside of me. And what he said just brought it out, but it was there, which means that somewhere within me, I believed that I was less than. I believed that I was not his equal. And that's why when he would talk to me that way, I would just shrink because I believed it to be true. So when you're in a partnership, there's 2 things that need to happen when your partner says or does something. The first thing is checking yourself and really discovering, okay, why am I feeling this way? What's really going on with me? Why am I having these thoughts? Really working out yourself. And when you are able to work yourself down and when you are calm, that's when you have your conversation with your spouse. Don't do it when you're angry. Don't do it when your feelings are hurt. Don't do it when you're offended, because you're not going to think clearly. Emotions are irrational. How you respond to your partner is going to be irrational. handle yourself first, find that peace. And when you are at that peace, then you can communicate, hey, I notice, when you talk that way, it comes off like this. And I know you love me. This is not your intent behind it, or, let's talk about it if it is. But having this conversation when you are more clear-minded, it sets up your relationship for success, because your person, these are your people. This is your person, can, come back at you with more of a rational conversation and like, let's talk about it. Oh, is that what I sound like? Nope, that was not my intent. Let me reel it in. You just tell me when I'm doing it again, and, we can work through this. And that's how you make marriages work, because that stuff's going to happen. I've had clients where they're, a new mom, they're a stay-home mom now. And so, there's always that big identity shift with that. And their husband would come home from work and he would just go straight to the backyard, go watch the game, go have a beer. And she's just sitting there like, well, I've been with my child, I've been with my daughter all day, and that's all I'm doing. And he just comes home and he just goes to the backyard and has his beer and watches his game, and he must not care about me. He must not love me. He must not love us. He must not see that I'm struggling in the house. And because she had that interpretation, that was making their marriage go down. Instead of really realizing, okay, how are you interpreting this action? You are looking at it as, he doesn't love me. He must not care about me. All he did was come home. He said hi to you, and then he went out there. You created that meaning behind it. Because when I talk to him, he's exhausted from dealing with all the people that he has at work, and he just needs a moment to regroup. But if you come to your spouse like, you don't care about us, you just go to the back and you need to have your time, and I'm over here drowning at home and all of that stuff, well, what's going to happen? How is he going to respond? How is a man going to respond? He's going to shut down, and he's not even going to want to have this conversation. But if you check your emotions and you say, okay, I'm clearly feeling some kind of way and I am struggling, let me have this conversation with my husband in a more clear-minded state. This is why I say, and I know this is really controversial and a lot of people don't agree with me, but I tell people, go to sleep mad. Go to sleep pissed off. I know people say, like, don't go to sleep mad. You like, go, work out, even if it's 3 or 4 hours, work it out. One thing that I know for sure is fighting while you're emotional. And then when you're tired on top of that is a recipe for disaster. But if you go to sleep, your mind can calm down. And when you wake up, you can have a rational conversation. But you trying to do that stuff all night. I know my husband, he clocks out at like 9 o'clock at night. I can barely have a conversation about what the kids were doing because he's exhausted. And if I come up in there and try to fight him at 9 o'clock, he's really going to zone out. And I don't know what's going to happen. So yes, go to sleep mad, have the conversation when your mind is together. That's what you have to find. So that's what I find so intriguing, because it's not really about what you guys are talking about. It's still going to be there. The conflict is still there. It's still out there. This is the mind. The mind is what's changed. So allow the mind to get it together. You handle the mind, and then you address it. This is how you save marriages. It's learning how to handle yourself, handling your emotions, handling your thoughts, learning about why you are thinking and feeling the way that you do. And it makes it a lot more easier to handle the mind. Children, the relationship that you have with your kids has nothing to do with your children. Children are loud. Children don't listen to their parents. Children do things that you don't want them to do. That's just the nature of kids. That's part of the job of being a parent. So what your children are doing, or how you are as a parent, has nothing to do with kids. Kids are crazy. Kids bring chaos in your life. We all know it. Every single parent knows that when you have children, your life turns upside down. So how you show up as a mother, as a father, it's not about what they do. They're going to do some crazy stuff that surprises you. The things that I see when my children, and I walk into a room and I'm like, why are you on their neck? what are you doing? Like all the craziness that happens, that's going to happen. But how you handle them, how you handle the mind, that will determine whether you're a good parent to them or not. I know I have to tell my kids to do things like 1,000 times, so much. So often I have to tell them to do 1,000 things over and over and over, like clean your room, make up your bed, eat all your food, sit down, don't get off, over and over. And I have a choice. I can either go off on them, which can't lie, have those moments, but I can either go off on them, I can yell at them, or I can find a creative way to get them what I want them to do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have anything to do with my children or what they're doing, and everything to do with how I choose to handle those emotions when they start to arise. So all in all, success in your relationships, success in your career, success in money, success in any area outside of yourself has nothing to do with those people, with those experiences, and everything to do with how your mind has been programmed to respond to difficult people, to difficult experiences. And if you want to be happy, you have to learn to work harder on yourself than on your job and your relationships. Now, the first step that you have to do to start to create a healthy mind is that you need to realize that you cannot control your thoughts. So we need to stop judging our thoughts. We need to stop criticizing the thoughts that we have. And we need to stop thinking that, when it comes up, we can just turn them off. It's not possible. Same with your emotions. You can't stop your emotions from happening. The reason is because your mind has been programmed. It's like a pre-wiring to think and to feel this way. And the only way to get out of the cycle of your thoughts and the cycle of your emotions is just to start observing them. Just start looking at them. And I tell people that they need to treat their mind like a toxic relationship. So if you criticize yourself, if you judge yourself, if you belittle yourself, if your mind says crazy things, if you have anxiety attacks or any emotions that you don't want, that you don't like, it's kind of like a toxic relationship. Most people have been in a toxic relationship in their life, and it's the one where you're in it and everybody around you is like, yo, what are you doing with that person? That person is crazy, or that person is just not a nice person, or I don't like the way how you guys are together. You're not good together. But when you're in the relationship, you may know like this might not be the healthiest, but you don't realize how dangerous that relationship is because you're in it. It's hard to see all of the crazy when you're inside of it. But when you do break up with that person, or there is some type of separation, you start to look at that relationship more from an objective point of view, and you're thinking, maybe it was toxic. He is crazy. What was I thinking about being with him? But the reason why you were able to see that is because you created that separation. You were able to look at that relationship, to look at how you guys were communicating, and then you can see it was toxic. The mind's just like that. Until you can actually look at it, you really don't know how toxic it is. I have a scenario so people can understand a little bit more when I say separate yourself from your mind and why that's healing. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios, and you tell me which scenario gives you more power, more control, and more freedom in your life. Okay, scenario number 1. You're walking home, you're by yourself, it's nighttime, and you just have a few blocks to get home. And you see a man walking towards you, and he's looking kind of sketchy. And as soon as he, is in front of you, he reaches into his pocket, he takes out a gun, puts it to your head, and says, "Give me all of your money." Terrifying moment. Now, scenario number 2. You're walking down the street, and across the street, you see another woman walking, and she's a little bit further down, but you see a man walking towards her, and he puts a gun to her head, and he says, "If you don't give me all of your money, I am going to kill you." Now, which scenario gives you more power, more control, and more freedom? Is it being a victim of a robbery or a witness to the robbery? Victim or witness? Which one would you rather be? A witness, right? As a victim, you just stuck. You can't do anything. As a witness, you can call the cops. You can run in another direction. You have more power in this situation. The same is with your thoughts and emotions. Again, if you guys have those painful thoughts and those difficult emotions, which we all experience, if you become a witness to them, you can no longer be a victim. Now, the number one reason why people suffer so much, and it's not because of what others have done to them, it's not because of their experiences, it's because they identify with the mind. They believe the things that the mind says. And most people have become a slave to the mind. So this is something that I also tell my clients that's so important. The mean things that your mind says to you, how you judge yourself, how you criticize yourself, how you belittle yourself, your fears. Again, this is just how your mind has been programmed to think. It is not a reflection of the you today. All you need to do is to discover what that programming is and rewrite the software. That is how you become a master of the mind and no longer a slave to it. And it's simple. You can start by just thinking about how you respond to certain situations. How do you respond to when somebody's rude to you? How do you respond when somebody's annoyingly honking behind you? How do you respond when your friend shows up late to your event? How do you respond getting on an airplane? How do you respond having difficult conversations with your friends? How do you respond when somebody makes a comment about your weight? Just by even thinking about those moments, you are becoming more aware of your natural response. That is looking at your thoughts so that when you do have an experience and those mean thoughts start to arise, just take a step back and just look at them. Become a bystander of the mind. You're aware that an event is happening. You're just not taking part in it. When you take a step back from your thoughts, from your emotions, you can then intentionally and consciously choose the next choice. Your thoughts, your emotions aren't dictating what you do next. You get to decide, this is how I want to respond to the situation. You are no longer reacting to the mind. You are no longer reacting to how you are feeling. You are deciding, this is how I want my relationship to be. This is how I want to be in business. So just, start with the easy. Start with the lightweight emotions. Start with the lightweight thoughts. You don't have to go into how you feel with those deep traumas that you went through as a child. Start with the easier ones. Like I said, getting cut off on the highway. How do you feel when it happens? I know when I first started this was something that was really hard for me. It was not easy for me just to take a step back from my thoughts. It was very, very difficult. And I was exhausted. I could not believe how many thoughts and emotions were running all through my body. I was like, Lord, you just don't know it because you're so stuck in it. So if you just kind of take a moment and just start looking at the lightweight thoughts. And then when you start to laugh at those moments, that's when you can go to those deeper, those more rooted thoughts and emotions. And look at it like working out. When you first work out, that's really difficult. You're not going to go in there and bench press 100 pounds. You're going to injure yourself. But you could start with some 5-pound weights. And once those get easier, you go to the more difficult weights. And that's how you start to master the mind, taking control of the mind, and ultimately taking control over your life and living your life with more intention. Now, a really good exercise you guys can do, they're called mental rehearsals. Oftentimes we have people in our life that have to be in our life that we can't just necessarily cut off. However, you notice that there's similar repeated type conversations that happen that turn into conflict. So maybe it's with your child where you notice that they do something that really, really frustrates you and you usually just lash out on your child. You can start doing actual mental rehearsals in your brain where you imagine your child doing that thing and then you respond the way that you ideally want to do. Now, why does this work? Because the mind doesn't know the difference between real life and imagination. So when you're doing these mental rehearsals, your mind actually thinks that you're doing that in real life. So those nerve wiring and nerve connections are all happening. And they have science behind this. They've done tests. Scientists have done a test where with piano players, And they took 3 different groups. The first group would practice the same chords for 2 weeks straight. The second group would mentally rehearse playing those chords that the first group is playing, but they're not actually playing it. They're literally just imagining it. And the third group just wasn't doing anything. And after those 2 weeks, they looked at the brain scans and they had them, do that same rehearsal in their brain. And they saw that the nerve connections were almost the same as the person that was rehearsing playing the piano as the person that was actually playing it. So when you do these mental rehearsals, when you think of a fight that you have constantly with a spouse and you actually have that fight in your brain, but this time you respond the way that you want to respond, it's just like this beautiful practice. So if you notice there is a pattern with your romantic partner that happens all the time, do that rehearsal and you'll notice that when it comes up again, your brain is prepared to respond the way you want it to respond. That is rewiring the mind. That is where you hold your power. And that is what saves marriages, saves families, and saves your business. Something you can do with a boss. If you have a really difficult boss that says mean things or belittles you, and you may not say anything to your boss, but it makes you feel that kind of way and you kind of go down a spiral by yourself, I want you to do a rehearsal of your boss actually saying that to you, but you feeling at peace. That boss is not taking away your joy. You are stabilizing yourself and you get to control how other people impact your life. And so I encourage you guys to try these mental rehearsals. There's science behind this. This isn't just made up, blah, blah, woohoo stuff. You actually do this and you can create just a happier, more loving life for yourself.